A very pleasant good afternoon and welcome to the APNU AFC main channel and welcome to the rush for this afternoon. My name is Randolph Critchlow. I want to say thank you very much for joining us as usual to our loyal viewers. We want to say thank you to those joining us internationally in the region and right here in Guyana. My name is Randolph Critchlow and again, you're on to the rush as usual, 5:30 in the afternoon news of the day and bring you the credible and valid information. As usual, as we start the show, we like to know where you're joining us from. So just hit the comments and let us know where you're viewing our program from this afternoon as we bring to you the credible and valid information. Of course, shout out to all of the people who are jumping onto the comments right now. It's Fraser from Toronto was the first to comment this afternoon. Let us know where you're joining us from. We're always happy to hear from our loyal listeners, our friends, our family out there who are always supportive of what we're doing. French Guiana in the house, Florida. Thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon. And welcome, Barbados, as usual. Our friends in Antigua, thank you very much for being a part of the rush this afternoon as we will be unpacking some issues. So, what is in the suitcase this afternoon to unpack? A number of issues. COVID 19, we're going to be talking about. We're also going to be talking about the meeting today between the leader of the opposition and the U.S. ambassador and the chief of mission. They met today at the leader of the opposition's office. We also saw Petition 88 being heard in the court today. Now, that is a petition, the elections petition brought by the APNU AFC. And it was heard today, and we are awaiting a ruling, of course, that it is slated to happen on the 26th. So we're going to unpack a part of that. Hopefully, we'll get Mr. Roy Zilford, Senior Counsel, MP Roy Zilford, to come on the show and explain and give us a summary of what played out today. But we saw that happening today. We also continue to see the rise in missing persons, a very, very alarming trend, and we need to talk about that today. So those are some of the issues that we're going to be unpacking from the suitcase, bringing you credible and valid information this afternoon. It's a wonderful Wednesday afternoon. It's the 7th. It is the 7th of April. Thank you very much. Continue to hit the comments. Let us know before we start the program, before we start unpacking our issues today. Let's continue to shout out those persons who are hitting the comments from Brooklyn. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Right? Thank you very much, all of the usual supporters, usual suspects who are on our show. We want to say thank you very much for those. Skeldon, thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon as we bring to you credible and valid information. Lyndon is in the house. Alex Hooper, thank you very much for being a part of our program this afternoon as we wait for others to come in, because we like to be cautious to our supporters and our viewers. We want everybody to get all of what we're sharing here. Remember, we are also live on YouTube. For those persons who prefer to look at us on that platform, you're welcome to tune in every day at 5:30. We're on YouTube and we like to hear from you. Hit the comment section, hit the like button, subscribe. And for those persons who are new to the page, hit the like button on the Facebook page so you get automatic notifications when we're online. Remember, if you don't like the page, then you will not be informed when we come live. We are trying, of course, to ensure that you have a pleasurable viewing experience when you tune in to APNU AFC's main page and you tune into any of our show, whether it be the Rush, whether it be in the Ring, whether it be Advancing the Cause. Of course, Advancing the Cause will start at 6:30 this afternoon, or any other program that we have, Building Bridges. We try to improve your viewing experience here on APNU AFC TV. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Right. Kaituma. Port Kaituma in the house. Oxford. Thank you very much for tuning in. Folks, we're about ready to get started. Bella Drum is in the house. Thank you very much for tuning in all the way up there on the west coast of Berbice. Thank you very much for tuning in. Right. Coming to you live and direct from Georgetown, we're going to be bringing across the waves. Yes, of course, Annette Ferguson is tuned in. She'll be on tomorrow across the waves. Definitely, definitely, we are continuing to improve what we're doing here at APNU AFC and bringing you quality programming. So tune in tomorrow at 6:30 for Across the Wave. MP Annette Ferguson is locked in right now and watching the program. We want to say thank you very much to our hardworking MPs who are continuing to hold the line of battle there as the installed administration continues to show us that they definitely don't know what they're doing in terms of the administration of this country. We don't need to get into that now. We have many occasions to highlight the inadequacies and the ineptness, if that is a word, of this current installed administration. St. Kitts, New York, New Jersey, Barbados, welcome, welcome all. Let us start unpacking today. Folks, it has been 401 days. 401 days since the March 2nd regional and general elections, and this country still does not have credible results from those elections. 401. 401 days since the March 2nd regional and general elections. And today we saw elections petition 88 being heard in the court. That is a step in the right direction. We will await the ruling. We'll have a conversation about that a little later down. It has been 248 days since August 2nd, when this fraudulent administration would have been installed in government. 401 days since this administration was installed in government. And again, we continue to you know sound the call and hold the line. Those are the things we need to ensure that people know what is happening in our country. Right? Again, this is why I shouted out the MPs just now, because they're doing an extremely good job at holding the line and holding the PVP accountable, holding them accountable. Right? And as we talk about holding people accountable, we need to hold this current administration accountable for the lax approach when they took over, when they were installed to COVID-19. Today we saw the 250th COVID related death, fatality in our country. 57-year-old female from region number 4 was a dead person number 250. Folks, this is a very serious. Very serious, and we have to pay attention to it. I just want to point out something to our viewers. Because I keep the numbers and I like to inform people. From August 2nd to now, it's been 248 days. 248 days since this PVP administration was installed. It means, therefore, if we look at the amount of COVID deaths, which was, I think, about 20 or 21 when they took over. That's minus 21 from that 50, that 250, right? Minus 21 from the 250. That is how many persons would have died on the PVP's watch. Almost one a day. They're only 248 days in power. Installed 248 days ago. Right? And on the day watch, we had 229 deaths. It is unbelievable, folks. Unbelievable. And I said it yesterday and I will say it again. The PPP when they took over from sheer ignorance, out of an abundance of ignorance, they decided that they are going to reverse those enforcement measures put in place by the APNU AFC. And they are going to approach it from a soft enforcement position. They are going to take soft enforcement measures. And they pushed back the curfew and they semi-opened up the place and they relaxed those measures. And so what we ended up with was a people who felt like these measures were not to be adhered to. So people felt okay in doing what they want. And we had a very, very serious thing happening in the country where persons were just ignoring because soft measures or soft enforcement weren't working. And so their approach caused this. And I will put it on at their doorstep. You can argue with me whether you want or not, but I will lay the blame squarely at the feet of the PPP and this fraudulent installed administration. Because there were measures put in place to ensure persons obey the curfew. When they came in, they pushed back the curfew and they relaxed those measures. Now they are scrambling. I said it, I'll repeat it again. They are scrambling now with the army bus running around trying to enforce hard enforcement. Exactly what they were against when they came in. This is what the APNU AFC was doing. These are measures taken by many countries around the world to ensure the safety of their people. Right? It was the fraudulent vice president who, when asked about this same issue about enforcement, said that you can't lock people in the houses long. How long you gonna lock people in the houses? That's what he said. He asked. He said it's sad, yes, that you're 1 or 2 or 3 people dying, but that's the reality. You can't lock up people in the house. This is what this fraudulent, uncaring, unfeeling installed vice president said. So they allowed the thing to run rampant. Now that the horse is out the barn, they're trying to shut the door. And this is not to say that we are playing politics here with COVID-19. But I'm still simply stating the fact. We saw the approach of the PPP when they came in. They decided that they will relax these measures. And hence we are in this situation right now. They have to take responsibility. Now that they're scrambling because the numbers are beyond us. And we're hearing about deadlier and deadlier strains of this thing. And people seem not to care because the government has given them license to be nonchalant about COVID-19. No respect for the curfew, no respect for enforcement. Let's educate them and hope that they'll do the right thing. Folks, again, I repeat, it was fraudulent vice president who said 1 or 2 persons will die. Yes, people will die. And it's sad, he said, that you see people dying, but you can't lock people in their houses. Now they're running around, locking people in buses, carrying them to the station. He said it before, and it is evident that there is a disconnect between what some of the ministers say and do and what Jack Dio is saying or doing, or what the president is saying or doing. And this is probably a reason why we have not seen any post-cabinet press briefing from this fraudulent administration. Maybe everybody is doing their own thing. Frank is running around telling us something about, he's going to enforce, and now I see he's getting help from the army. You have the president running around talking about corridor of unity and peace and one Guyana. You have Nandalal running around taking back land. The tin pot dictator Darmlal running around, um, trying to put his hands in all the NDCs. But nobody's serious about what is happening with COVID-19. Folks, let us hope that the vaccine has a positive effect on curbing this COVID-19. Because these are bad numbers. These are extremely bad numbers. Let us move on, folks. Let us move on. What else are we unpacking this afternoon? What else are we unpacking? We have a number of issues, as I said at the beginning of the show. We have a number of issues to unpack. Let's see what we're looking at right now. Folks, this alarming, the alarming instance of persons being reported missing is something that we have to address seriously. For such a small population, and let me play this because these are the faces of persons who are still missing. These are the faces of the persons who are still missing. I think we just have one up here, but there are a number of other persons who are missing. This is one of the latest, right? Folks, oh, they're showing you, it's actually showing you. But these are the faces of persons who are still missing. And, when you sit and you think about such a small population and how strange it is, so many persons in such a small space of time to be reported missing. Of course, we had the sad case of Mr. Joel Skeet, the young man whose body they found partially decomposed. So we're hoping, of course, that these young people who are missing are found alive and well. But there must be some sort of explanation as to why this sudden rise in missing persons. It is alarming, and it's quite scary to think about it. And I personally have not seen any information coming out of the Ministry of Home Affairs or Public Security on this issue. There must be something said because there are persons in our sections of our society who are scared at this moment, who are wondering what is happening, right? Somebody from the government needs to step up and say, look, listen, we are investigating these things. There seems to be no connection to these cases. It may be a coincidence, but these are alarming numbers. And as citizens do, when they don't know what is happening and they are scared and they're wondering what is happening, a lot of information is being peddled and pushed around there. They are very public spirited people who are sharing safety information, which is good. Steps you need to take to ensure that you are safe when you're in public. Things like ensuring people know which taxi you jump in. People are talking about self-defense and all manner of things because this is what people do when the leadership is, quite frankly, silent on this matter. The people have to devise ways of protecting themselves. Right? But we are still looking on, and these questions must be asked because this is what we're seeing in our society. Sadly, that young man who called his mother and said, I'm coming home, living a few minutes away from the barbershop, and never made it home. These young people who are missing right now are still yet to be found. And you cannot blame people for being alarmed, being scared, and wondering what is happening. In the absence of information, people assume all manner of things. People assume all manner of things, and you cannot blame them for being scared at this point in time. You cannot, right? And we have decided that, we will share some of that information also about staying safe. As we shared yesterday, we talking about snap and send. Snap a picture of the vehicle that you're going, send it to a person, a friend or family. There are SOS features built into your Android phones that you can use. And these are things that we need to be serious about. These are things that we need to tell our children about. These are things that we need to share with our relatives and our friends about ensuring that they are safe, since there is no information out there as to what exactly is happening. So you have to take care of your safety. And I'm going to wait. I'm saying this is the second day I'm dealing with this particular topic. And we're saying this, and I'm hoping that at some point in time, the Minister of Home Affairs looks into this. When are we going to take it seriously? When the number skyrockets and then we have a full-on chaos in our country? People's fears need to be calmed. And that will only be calmed if some sort of leadership is shown and people understand that there are measures being put in place to ensure that they are safe in their own country, in their own communities, in their own neighborhoods. So at some point in time, information needs to be shared about what is really happening in our country. Right? Folks, we're happy that you're commenting. We're happy that you're part of the conversation as we unpack some of the issues in the news today. We unpack the information. So, as we move on, folks, we want to deal with, and I know the next topic is quite a contentious one. The leader of the opposition met with the U.S. Ambassador Sarah Ann Lynch and the chief of mission, today. And that meeting, we'll share with you some details from the meeting on the next side of this quick break. Thank you very much for staying tuned to the Rush this afternoon. My name is Randolph Critchlow. For those persons who are now joining us, we want to say thank you very much, internationally in the region right here in Guyana. Thank you very much for being a part of this broadcast. As we said, we are going to be going on to the meeting by the leader of the opposition with the ambassador. Let's bring that up for you, for those persons who aren't aware. The leader of the opposition today met with the U.S. ambassador Sarah Ann Lynch, and I know that name, just the name, is a conversation piece for many persons. And I say this because there are still bitter taste in many persons' mouths about the interventionist role the Trump administration played in the installation of the PPP government, the fraudulent PPP government, the installation of that government in August the 2nd, 2020. The role played by both the ambassador and those persons, those political masters who were part of the Trump administration, Secretary of State Pompeo and Kozak and Lynch, and all of these persons were front and center with their posture and their positioning to kind of squeeze the PVP the PVP in the back door and squeeze the APNU AFC out of power and install that fraudulent administration. And this is a theme that we will see today, because as we go on to our next topic, which is elections petition that deals specifically with order number 60, we see how these legal measures are used to squeeze the APNU AFC out of power and install this fraudulent administration. So we understand the sentiments that may be expressed by persons when they hear about Sarah Ann Lynch and the U.S. ambassador. Many persons were calling for her removal, and but she is still here, and the leader of the opposition today met with her, and there was a release by the leader of the opposition office. Let me see if I can bring that up for you. It says the leader of the opposition, Honorable Joseph Harman, accompanied by the leader of the Alliance for Change, Kemra Dramjatan, met yesterday with the U.S. ambassador. This was yesterday, sorry, not today, Sarah Lynch, and the Deputy Chief of Mission, Mr. Mark Collinan, at the office of the leader of the opposition. The leader of the opposition took the opportunity again to congratulate the election of Joseph Biden to the presidency of the United States of America and acknowledge Ambassador Lynch as the representative of that administration. The meeting focused on a number of issues, including matters relating to governance, parliamentary democracy, and national security. The leader of the opposition shared the coalition's views and observation on these issues and how it badly affects the governance and Guyanese people, and specifically the impact and effects on the supporters of the APNU AFC. Mr. Harman highlighted the discriminatory practices of the PPP regime and the arbitrary firing of public servants, the disbursement of COVID-19 cash grant, and politically motivated charges and arbitrary arrest of persons perceived to be coalition supporters, among other issues. These are issues raised at that meeting. Right? It was reiterated that a spirit of consensus and collaboration is necessary in that it requires putting the good of the country first as being paramount. There ought to be efforts to engage in meaningful dialogue with the support of the U.S. to ensure that the PPP regime does not govern in a manner marginalizing a large section of the population, which is something that we have focused on long now, in that, this slim majority that they fraudulently gave to the PPP is what they're sitting on and riding on. So there's a large section of the population who is depending on the representation of the opposition. Mr. Harman requested that of the ambassador that the opposition be informed of any major changes in U.S. policy decisions on Guyana. Additionally, the leader of the opposition requested that opposition views be communicated with Washington on a regular basis, having regard to the fact that large sections of the local media landscape is unhelpful to the opposition. What's important as a copy of a summary report on the PPP's regime's executive lawlessness, political persecution, and ethnicization of Guyana from the period of August 2nd to December 25th, 2020 was shared with the U.S. ambassador and the chief of mission, and an updated report on the current period will be shared with the public in a short space of time. And that ends the statement by the leader of the opposition's office there on that meeting. Folks, we want to have your comments on how, you know, the relations at the end of the day, these are my takes. The US is a significant, not if not the most significant diplomatic partner for most countries. And ensuring cordial and diplomatic relations is an is a necessity. It's a necessity. It is unfortunate that the past administration, the Trump administration, placed such an interventionist, serious interventionist role in the installation of the PPP government, right? And again, we're reading the comments of persons who are following this particular story. Persons are saying the Sarah is compromised, um, right? She knows everything that is taking place. There are many persons who feel very negatively, and they have the right to, because there was a definite posture being led by the Trump administration, of course, the Secretary of State Pompeo during that period, even during the recount, trying to influence as we speak about what happened, as we speak about what happened during the recount and prior to and after the recount, we saw all of the interventionist strategies being used, pressuring the courts, pressuring persons involved in the process, right? Every time there is a court ruling to be handed down, there is you can bet your bottom dollar. And this was a feature during that time that there would have been a joint statement. There would have been a joint statement every time you hear a ruling is supposed to be handed down, right? And this was seen as undue pressure on the process and the means of which these disputes are being sorted out, these election disputes. But folks, again, people may have their views. The opposition has a job to do. The leader of the opposition still has to represent a large section of our society. And again, we are dealing with a different administration. We might have the same representative in our country in the form of Sarah and Lynch, the ambassador. But make no bones about it, the administration is different. The Secretary of State is different. And we are hoping, we can only keep our fingers crossed and hope that the issues raised by the leader of the opposition, as we spoke about them just now, as the leader spoke about them just now, those issues are heard and they are communicated, as the leader said, to the powers that be in Washington. So I think that's what we're going to deal with this particular issue. We're not going to delve in anymore on it. People have their views. I have my view. I think the meeting was necessary. I think a lot of times the information about what is happening in our country is not necessarily filtered to those people, because of course there is a disconnect between our media and what happens there. And so you have to have, we see the PVP having lobbyists in Washington, and a lot of time we have to play that particular game to ensure that our message is heard outside of the confines of our boundaries. So folks, those persons in the diaspora who are looking, you have a job to play. You have a role to play. Your voice is important, right? We know we have a number of supporters who live in the United States of America. It is very easy to write your congressman, very easy to write your senator, and express to them the issues that you know are happening in Guyana, the issues that may not get out, the issues that may not make the desk of the congressman or congresswoman or the senator, whoever it is, your local representatives. These are very important steps that need to be taken, right? We of course acknowledge the importance of diplomatic, cordial and smooth diplomatic relations with a player as significant as the United States of America. So, I mean, Again, right? People may have their views on these particular issues. But folks, we are moving on. We are going to our next topic this afternoon, and it has to do with petitions. Petition number 88. Petition number 88 was heard today. Of course, the public could have listened in on those proceedings. And out of those proceedings, we heard at the end of the proceedings that the Chief Justice to hand down decision on election petition 88 on April the 26th. April the 26th. Let me get the information for you as it relates to this particular issue. Come Monday, April the 26th, the High Court will rule on elections petition case challenging the results of the 2020 regional and general elections as declared by the Guyana Elections Commission. Chief Justice Roxanne George Wiltshire made the announcement moments ago. Well, this, of course, is not moments ago. We're picking up this information from Village Voice, and we're going to talk a bit about Village Voice in a second. But Chief Justice Roxanne George Wiltshire made the announcement today after the legal hearing, after hearing arguments both by the petitioners and the respondents in the case. Right. In declaring the results of the elections, GCOM had relied heavily on Order Number 60, the National Recount Order. However, the petitioners, through their lead attorney, John Jeremy, have maintained that Section 22 of the Elections Law Act, Amendment Act, for which GCOM relied on to bring the order into effect, is unconstitutional. They have submitted to the court that only Parliament could amend the laws of the country, thereby ruling out the notion that GCOM had legal powers to amend elections law to pave. So essentially, for those persons who are now joining us, that is the main issue being argued there today, that was argued there today in the elections petition case. This particular petition, of course, deals with law and matters of law, challenging the legality of Order Number 60, frontally challenging the legality of Order Number 60, premised, of course, on Section 22 of the Elections Amendment Act. This was the legal framework used to bring Order 60 into force or into action, or be used by GCOM. So this, of course, is a lot of legal back and forth, legal language that many persons may not necessarily discern and understand. Basically, as we unpack this today, what Petition 88 deals with and says, or the petitioners are saying, is that, look, Order 60 was unconstitutional, right? Order 60 was unconstitutional, and unfortunately, we don't have Senior Counsel Royce Ford to unpack in a legal way what necessarily played out today, but we're going to have him sooner rather than later. Before the end of the week, we'll have him on the show to talk about that petition. He is a bit busy at the moment, so we're not getting him on the program today. But for those persons who are tuned to what was happening during the recount, we learned so many things about how these processes are supposed to happen. And if one can remember, the idea of Order 60 was to ensure that we end up with a final credible count. A final credible count. Even before we get to the fact that Order 60 did not do what it was intended to do, or GCOM, should I say, deviated from what they said they were supposed to do in Order 60, use Order 60 to do, and they did their own thing. Even before we get to that, This petition challenges the validity of the order itself because it was premised on Section 22 of the Elections Amendment Act, which essentially puts the power to create this new law, so to speak, in the hands of GCOM. And of course, the contention is that GCOM cannot do this. And that is a power reserved for the parliament. So this is essentially the meat of the argument. And as we think about it and we talk about it, we know, of course, that Order 60 did not do what it was intended to do, even before we get to the fact that it was unconstitutional in the first place. Order 60 did not do what it was supposed to do, and we spent many moons discussing this through the legal minds. And I will say, for those persons who are locked into what is happening with this petition, please note that this is not a sprint. Because whatever happens on the 26th, whatever ruling is passed down, you can bet your bottom dollar that it will be challenged in the Court of Appeal. And whatever happens at the Court of Appeal, it will then be challenged at the CCJ. And of course, we know that Petition 99, which deals with the evidence uncovered, evidence of fraud uncovered during the recount, the anomalies and the discrepancies and all of the other things uncovered during the recount, that was thrown out by this same judge on a technicality. And that will be appealed very soon in the Court of Appeal. And then whatever happens there, I am sure that it will go to the CCJ also. So a matter of reality is that both of these cases will end up at the CCJ. Both of these cases will end up at the CCJ. So this is not a sprint. We don't expect this to be a sprint. It is a marathon. And you have to continue running. The end will not be close. So I hear a lot of, all right, I hear a lot of optimistic talk and optimism out there about petitions moving quickly and things happening and getting rid of this fraudulent administration in 3 years. Folks, this is not a marathon. It is not a sprint, it is a marathon. And this will not be over tomorrow. Yesterday we spoke about the signs that the PPP are already throwing those signs out there, these little breadcrumbs. Darmlal talking about they have no trust in GCOM. Because we can bet our bottom dollar that both of these cases will end up at the CCJ. And after that is done, whether the outcome is positive or negative, we're going to still have a fight because GCOM has to administer elections, whether it be a new elections, this one is vitiated, whatever. There already talks about a new GCOM chair, new list, reorganizing GCOM, reconstituting GCOM. So I say this with great certainty that this process, this road to a new elections, I will not fill you up with any false hope. I will not put a date to it and say the people will be out there in 2 years or 3 years. This administration will be out of power. I will say to you that this is a marathon, and if the PVP comes out of power in 3 years, that's good. If it takes 4 years, it's good. If it takes 1 year, it's good. But we have to be willing to dig our heels in and be prepared for the fight. Because it wouldn't be easy and it wouldn't be short. And despite the time, despite however long it takes, you have to be ready when the time comes to fight. You have to be willing to fight. And that is the long and the short of it. That is the long and the short of it. You have to be willing to fight. And you have to be willing to understand and put in the back of your mind that this fight might not be a short one. If it is short, then good. But there needs to be an acceptance that you might end up going all 12 rounds. If you want to get these people out, it might not be a knockout, a fifth or sixth round knockout. You might have to go on a decision, the judge's decision after 12 rounds. So don't be caught up in any illusions, my friends. Don't be caught up in any illusions. This will be a fight, and it will be a long fight. And that is what I have to say on that. Do not be caught up in any illusions. What you can be assured of is that the APNU AFC is not afraid of the fight. And we're going to be fighting. They're not afraid of the fight. So let's just remember that. Folks, we're slowly approaching the end of our program. We have about 9 minutes to go before we are joined, and we're going to be crossing over to Miss Coretta MacDonald, MP Coretta MacDonald, for her program, Advancing the Cause. We're going to be joining her in a bit. Let us see what else we have on the... I think we dealt with this already. Oh, let me just remind persons before we go, as we talk about COVID-19 in the country, let's remind you folks that the curfew is 10:30. Right? That the curfew is 10:30. Not 1 o'clock, not 2 o'clock, not 3 o'clock. It's 10:30. Right? It is 10:30. National curfew to 4 a.m. in the morning. After 4 a.m. you could come out. 10:30 you should be in your house. You should be in your house at 10:30. Right? That is the curfew time. Just a quick reminder. Right? Liz Batson is asking for me to tell you about Mr. Matthews. I do not have any information on what is happening with Mr. Matthews. He has not disclosed any real information as to what happened with him. We saw reports being posted in social media about him being kidnapped. I can't confirm whether or not that was so. He came on, he said a few things, but did not disclose any information. And I am not in possession of any information that will add to this discussion about what is happening with Mr. Matthews as we continue to see, right? Right? What is right? I mean, folks, we can only depend on the information out there. Mr. Matthews has not said anything, right? anything about that. I mean, I will leave him. He has a show. He can disclose um, what would have happened. As we wind down, we want to ensure that we remind you, right, of some of these safety measures that you need to take so that you can protect yourself and you can protect your family members um, as you go out there, right? Again, we're existing in times, strange times. So ensure that you do these things, right? Uh, Good afternoon to all of those persons in the comments. Miss Pamela Lord says, "Who's waking up at 4 o'clock to go where?" Especially not in these times. Especially not in these times. Um, we have to be vigilant. We have to be, very very aware of our surroundings, and we have to do the things that we need to do to protect ourselves. Protect ourselves. Right. We would have warned, we would have said to people that these things will happen, right? When we said welcome back to the PvP, we knew what that meant. We knew we would have seen an increase in crime and violent crime. We knew these things. So you have to protect yourself, right? Folks, we before we go, we have time for one more thing. You know, it is quite strange when you look around the country and you make a simple assessment as to what is taking a place, right? What is taking place in our country, right? And people joke and people laugh and they say, Guyana is not a real place. There are many videos of persons jumping out of the COVID-19 bus and all manner of things we take for granted and we take jokingly. But it is time that we take stock and we see where our country is going. We need to be extremely focused on developing our country because we do not want to end up like countries who would have come across great wealth and not be able to transition from the the quote unquote third world stigma. So it is incumbent on us, it's imperative that we as Guyanese continue to use our voices to ensure that our resources are used to ensure that we move forward, right? Folks, as I always encourage you, let us work together to ensure national development. As I said, we are going to be um, going over to Miss Coretta McDonald in just a few moments for advancing the cause, and we hope that you stay tuned for that. We're going to be doing it a little differently this afternoon. We are not going to be ending the broadcast. It's going to be a continued broadcast as we shift focus from the rush to advancing the cause this afternoon. It's going to be a continued broadcast, so do not sign out, do not go anywhere. We wouldn't end this one and then a few moments later start a next live. We are going to continue the broadcast from my show to the next show, which is Advancing the Cause with Miss Coretta McDonald. So stay tuned for that show, right? As we wait for Miss McDonald to come on, let's just have a quick 20-second break and we'll be back to wrap up. Right. I want to thank the persons from that for staying tuned, sorry, as we wrap up the show today on The Rush. Our friends there at Black Pearl Seafood coming soon. Look out for that. And we'll give you more information as to where you can find them and so you can support um, a business coming from one of your own. So, folks, as we make way this afternoon for our next program. As I said, we are not going to be signing out this afternoon and then signing back in. We're going to be joined. We're going to start our show, the next show, immediately after. So stay tuned. Do not leave the broadcast. I see the next host already lined up. Miss Coretta McDonald. Let me just bring her in very quickly to say hi. Yes, she is there. Good afternoon.
Hi, Randy. Good afternoon to you and to your viewers. I'm popping in this afternoon.
Yes, we're improving things on this show on this APN UFC TV. We're getting professional. So what can we expect today on your program?
Well,
What are we talking about?
we have quite a few things to discuss. I know the petition is a big one, but I know that you went at length with the petition. So I'm not going to go over the petition again, but just to ask our viewers to stay focused, ask our supporters to stay focused so that we can have the kind of agitation that we need to ensure that that petition goes the way it ought to go.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you very much. And as the viewers wait for the beginning of your program, let me just sign out. We look forward to your program today.
Thank you so much.
Right. Right, folks, that'll be in just a few moments. We'll have Ms. Coretta McDonald with her program across with. My name is Randolph Critchlow, and we want to say thank you very much for staying tuned. Stay tuned, of course, for that program with Coretta McDonald. I'll be out. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Remember, let's continue to work for national development. I'll see you tomorrow again at 5:30.
We go have a grand time all night tonight, all night tonight, all night tonight. We go have a grand time all night tonight, all night tomorrow night. We go have a fine time all night tonight, all night tonight, all night tonight. We go have a fine time all night tonight, all night tomorrow night. Let me go. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow the man. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow.
Well, good evening to you. My wonderful viewers, how are you doing? What have you done today? What did you do yesterday? I know we had a long weekend, our Easter weekend. But just before we get into our discussion for this evening, I just want to encourage you to share the link. Just share the link. While I'm going to be sharing, you share the link so that we can have quite a few more persons viewing with us this evening and being part of the discussion. So let's share the link. Just share the link. Let's take a minute or two to share the link. Good, I'm seeing quite a lot of things happening there. Quite a lot of things I'm seeing happening there. Quite a lot, quite a lot. While you are going to be sharing your link, like I said, I will be sharing the link too. So all of us will be a part of this discussion this evening. Good. So I'm sure that you know. Tell me what was your weekend like? I know we had Easter. We have I would have noticed our party bus. I noticed all the disco lights in the bus. I noticed patrons getting into the bus whether by force, and they're exiting too. I noticed buses on the west coast of Demerara. I noticed buses on Church Street. Um, I've seen some buses on the East Bank. I heard about buses in Region 6. And so, at least, I am happy that we are indeed concerned about this whole issue of COVID and the spread of COVID and our attitude towards the spread of COVID and being able to stifle the spread of COVID. But you know what? When we as adults behave irresponsible, then I think measures have got to be implemented. But it would have been a good thing, you know, if we were so concerned, or if we are so concerned about COVID, it would have been a good thing to see us bringing forward our curfew time. That would be a good step in the right direction. I read from a professor, or I think, was it a professor? A world leader, I think it was, who said some time ago, let me just find that for you, who said some time ago that we could bring to life the economy, but we cannot. Here it is. It says, we know how to bring the economy back to life. What we do not know is how to bring people back to life. Let me say that again. We know how to bring the economy back to life. What we do not know is how to bring people back to life. And I'm saying this, I'm reading this to say to us, the economy, you hear the talks all the time about the economy, and the economy is down, and the economy this and the, but let me tell you what, when we lose our citizens, that's it. The economy can pop up again, but when we lose our citizens, when they're dead, they're dead. That's it. The lives of families are shattered. Families are broken. Children are left without mothers and fathers. Parents are hurting because a child would have been infected. A child has died. And let me say to us, the COVID virus at this time, it's not only attacking persons who would have, persons who are having underlying illnesses. We're seeing every day younger persons are being infected with COVID, which means that the virus is going crazy, if I can say that. And it means, therefore, that we have got to be a little more responsible. We've got to act a little more responsible. And this kind of action should come from the top down and not from the bottom up. You know, certain things we see the big hammer is being dropped. But for certain things, for other things, we're not seeing that same big hammer. And I want to say to this installed administration, I mean, when we said so, you got upset. But there's a report out there that has labeled you as an installed regime. So let me say to this installed regime, you need to start acting responsible. You need to start putting the systems in place when it comes to COVID and other things too. And you need to act from the top so that others can see you acting in the right direction, and they would want to do that. And so our COVID deaths are now in the 240s. One day we had 4, might have been more at some point. But for this month alone, today's the 7th, I think it is. Today's the 7th. We've had, what, 15 deaths, I think we've had so far for this month. And this is alarming. This is alarming. You can correct me if my figures are not correct, but this is alarming. For just a couple of days in this new month, and we have so many, many deaths, COVID deaths. Come on, people. We have to be a little more careful. We have to observe the rules, the regulations that have been placed out there by the COVID task force. We have to be a little more responsible. And so I want to ask of you to remember that COVID kills. And yes, while we have the vaccine there, the vaccine doesn't prevent you from contracting the virus. And you know, it's as simple as 1, 2, 3 for you to contract that virus. So let's be very careful with what we do. Be mindful of crowded areas. Wear your mask correctly. Wash your hands thoroughly. Sanitize as often as possible. And you know, we have to be mindful of what we pass, materials we pass from one person to another, because I can tell you again, COVID is not written on anyone's forehead. And so we can be operating just as per normal, maybe a little cough now and again, and you sip on some water, which happens often, but sometimes we don't know. And so we have to treat everyone as a suspect, except for your family members who you can somewhat vouch for. We need to treat everyone as a suspect, because you're not sure who's carrying the virus around. And on that note with the virus, we have recognized, I think I said that last week, our schools are not going to be reopened as was being said. Our schools are not going to be reopened full blown, and that's the term I use. We're going to have again the 10, 11, and 12th grades out, and we're going to have our, I figure, our 5th and the 6th grades out. Let me say to our teachers, be very, very mindful. Be very careful. Be very, very responsible with how you conduct your mixing, your intermixing. And be very careful that you are not going to get caught up in what is happening. I'm saying this because we have gotten reports that several schools in and out of Georgetown, persons have been infected with COVID. And the COVID persons have been infected, some not knowing that they are infected with the COVID virus, but they have been interacting with their peers. And the interaction with their peers have placed them at risk too. So I want to say to us that we have to be very careful. We have to be very, very careful. And let me say to our education officers, if we are having those reports, then we need to ensure that all those teachers who would have come into contact with other members of staff and with students, that we advise them to go get themselves tested. And they should not be in and around our schools until they have been given the green light to say, you are not COVID positive. We shouldn't allow those persons to be milling around in our school buildings. because what we are going to be doing there is putting many, many more persons at risk. So please, education officers, wherever you are, please, if you get those reports, don't instruct our teachers and instill that they insist that they must go to schools. I remember when we had the issue at the Department of Education 68 breakdown. I think we would have had two instances there where persons were COVID positive and the department was closed for lengthy periods. Now, what is good for you should be good for our teachers too. So, so far we have had reports coming from 4 schools. I know one school was just sanitized last Saturday after there was a case there. I know we have another school on the East Bank. I know there are 2 other schools. Please make provisions for those teachers to be tested. And while they are being tested, while they are waiting their results, let's have them stay away from schools. Stay away from those schools. Again, COVID is no joke. COVID is serious. COVID is real. Let me say that again. COVID is real. COVID is not an APNU thing. COVID is real. And I want people to remember that. APNU did not create COVID. COVID came from wherever, but it's real. It kills. Just yesterday in our neighboring country there, Brazil, we had 4,000 deaths were registered. And those were only the ones that were registered. We don't know how many are not registered. And that's right across the road there from us. A bridge divides us and a river. Let's be very mindful. We want to have our people here. I mean, our population is not anything really to talk about. And so we want to have our citizens here. We've already lost 245 of them. Let's not allow any more to go. We have quite a few in isolation. We have quite a few in intensive care. Please. We love our people and we want our people to remain alive so that they can contribute to this society, towards making our country a better one. We have gotten several reports over the last couple of days where we would have witnessed murders across this country. It's sad. It's very, very sad. And these murders, some of them are deepening the wounds that we already have, and others are shattering dreams and hopes and lives and families. As a people, we need to be a little more reactive, a little more responsible, not reactive, a little more responsible. We need to be able to speak to each other and to say to our folks out there, violence is not the answer. Picking up a knife, picking up a cutlass, picking up whatever it is, a bottle, a something, a fork, a pitchfork, a something, that's not the answer. We have to be able to and you know, this is why we had certain sectors in place under the coalition. And these sectors were there to ensure that we can offer the kind of backup counseling and talks and so on to our people, to bring them into not subjection, but to bring reality awareness to them, that we can resolve issues by talking about them. We can resolve issues if you walk away when you're angry and then you return when you're not angry. So we can talk them over. I mean, we saw a young man, he and his girlfriend, they're having problems. He was killed. fighting among themselves. I mean, come on, we don't want to have those kinds of things marring our country. It doesn't send a good message to quite a lot of our young people. The little ones growing up, it doesn't send a good message. So we've got to be able to change that. We're going to take a break for about 2 minutes, and then we'll return to some more of what we want to talk about. But let's go to that break very quickly, and we'll return.
Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow. Blow the man. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow. We go have a grand time all night tonight. All night tonight. All night tonight. We go have a grand time all night tonight. All night tomorrow night. We go have a fine time all night tonight. All night tonight. All night tonight. We go have a fine time all night tonight. All night tomorrow night. Let me go. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow. Blow the man. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow.
Good. So we're here again. Sometimes we have to take we have to do a few things and then come again. But I started off by telling you about COVID, and this is really, really, really a very sore point for us. It's a very sore issue, and we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it as a country. We have to talk about COVID. It's all across this country. It's all across everywhere, and we have to talk about it. More so when it's affecting the school system. We have to talk even louder. We have to let our voices be heard, because our teachers and our students, they are the backbone of this country. And if we allow them to go, then you know what can happen there. So we don't want that to happen. The primary schools, the secondary schools, let's work on those. The head teachers, our education officers, let's work and ensure we have enough cleaning materials, so that we can have our schools being in that state of readiness for reopening on Monday or Tuesday, or whether it's going to be on Wednesday for some schools. So we have to talk about COVID. We have seen. I spoke about the murders that we've been having, but the other thing is we have seen a big jump in accidents over the last couple of months. This is another cause for concern. And I want to call on the traffic department of the Guyana Police Force to please come on, step up the pace. Too many of our folks are being injured. Too many of our folks are losing their lives to reckless behaviors, reckless attitudes being displayed on our roadways. Just on Sunday, we had lots and lots of rain. And in the midst of all of that rain, we saw some drivers just driving reckless on the road. Come on, we have a duty. You're not only saving your life, but you're saving the lives of others. We have the minibuses, we have those hire cars down the road. Come on, we have to be careful. Just the other day, we saw a minibus flipping and into a gutter and getting next to the fence of the Graham's Hall primary school. Come on, we have to do much better than we're doing now. And we could only do that if every one of us decide that we must act responsible. And so even our passengers in those vehicles, you have to speak up, because if you don't, then your life is going to also be at risk. And we're not only speaking here about speeding, we're also speaking here about putting on your mask, because on several occasions we've seen minibus drivers, minibus conductors, passengers in the minibuses not wearing masks. We have seen hire car drivers not wearing their masks. We have seen passengers in those vehicles not wearing their masks. Come on, we have to be responsible, folks. This is not the time for us to be here and behaving reckless and thinking that this cannot happen to you or that cannot happen to you. It can happen to any one of us. Any one of us can contract COVID. So let's make this a duty for each one of us. Let's make it our duty to ensure that we act responsible so that we can save the lives of persons around. Um, I'm going to have at least two guests on with us this evening, and so we're hoping that they're going to be coming in just now. We're going to talk about some other things, but I know that you're all excited about the elections petition. The elections petition, you're all excited about it, and because many of you were following here with Randy, um, you would have heard him talking about the elections petition. We're going to leave that for a little later, but I think the Honorable Natasha Singh Lewis is somewhere in studio. I'm not sure if she's in as yet. Yeah, she's going to be on just now. And so, Natasha, we welcome you again to Advancing the Cause. You always intrigue me with your look. She is just cool. Always that smile on her face. You can tell sometimes when she's upset. Even though the smile is there, you can tell when she's upset. But Natasha, like I would always call her Tash, welcome to Advancing the Cause. And I really want us to talk a little about these murders that we've been having, and how much they have been affecting the lives of our people. Apart from the murders, we have seen loads and loads of persons being missing, reported being missing. We saw the young man Joel Henry just the other day, and the next thing you know is that his body was found by the riverbank somewhere there. And these are cause for concern. We have to be concerned about these things, especially when we see quite a lot of our young people are being reported as missing. 13-year-old, 19 years old, 21 years old. It's cause for concern. And could you share with us your thoughts and what you think we can do to bring about some sort of change to this kind of behavior? What advice you can give to persons out there, in other words?
MP McDonald, it's always a privilege to be here with you on Advancing the Cause. I am very grateful yet again to be here. And to your viewers, I say a very good night. May the peace and blessings of Almighty God be with us all. Coretta, I notice you have a very big fan on here tonight, Randolph Critchlow. Very good night to you, Randy. Coretta, I also noticed that you have a lot of fans from around the world watching us here this evening. And so it is important that we share a positive message with our people. We have always been calling on our brothers and sisters to be responsible. What do I mean by being responsible? We owe it to our families, we owe it to our communities to be responsible, to be our brothers and sisters keepers. And so this evening, while we have seen so many social ills in our society, we have seen a rise of it in the last 8, 9 months. And there is only one thing to associate with that: a breakdown in leadership. And that's how I would categorize it: a breakdown in leadership. If the people don't respect their leaders, then you will find this kind of a decay in our society. And I want to say to all of our viewers, especially the ones who are not taking care of themselves and their families and their communities in this pandemic. When the coalition was in government and we had closed the borders and we put all the restrictions in place to contain the pandemic, there were the guardians of democracy and many others who said that COVID is a joke and the APNU AFC government is just trying to control the population. All right? And we know what the number of deaths was at the time when a new government was installed. Now, I want to draw the connecting lines, and I want to say to our society that it is those simple restrictions that we put in place because we care for our people, we care for our population, that caused the number of deaths to be so small over a 5 months period. And
Natasha, let me
did you do the comparison of the 5 months after August 2020 and the 5 months prior, and you see the difference?
Natasha, let me just interrupt you for a quick
at this time.
For a quick minute. Let me interrupt you, Natasha. I've been saying on my program ever since. We have at the Ministry of Health, and I mean, I have no apologies for saying this. We have 2 geriatrics and a halfway one. And I've been saying to them, if you don't know, call Valda Lawrence. She would be more than willing to assist you. Because if she could have kept...
He was head of the task force at that time.
Who was in charge of the task force. If you don't know, this has nothing to do with pride and so on. This is about our people and saving lives. If you don't know, the good book says, ask, and it shall be given unto you. Seek, and he shall find. And so, when you don't know, it's always good to ask. We have seen within that period what our numbers were. And from that period to December, we saw what the numbers, where the numbers went. And I cannot understand, and I'm sure you can't understand, and many of our viewers out there can't understand, why is it that we claim to have 3 doctors in one ministry, 3, and our COVID deaths are just spiraling. When we look at the population that we have, and I've been saying that, when we look at our population with the amount of deaths that we're having, it's alarming. But continue, Natasha.
Coretta, while we have to give Jack his jacket, the population, our communities, our citizens, they have a role to play. And I can't say that we have been responsible in that role. But I'm also saying that the government of the day has been lawless in terms of implementing proper regulations for handling the pandemic in Guyana. And I have no apologies for that. I can sit and talk to you for as long as you want on every area, the borders, the stops that we had in different regions, the checks, the follow-up, the control measures for public servants. We open up all the borders, open sesame. What do you think will happen? We have Brazil right next door. We have Suriname right next door. What do you think will happen? You as a government is supposed to put system in place to control the movement of people.
And you know, Natasha, you touch
for everybody, and I'm seeing some news. I haven't fact checked it as yet, where people are coming in with false COVID results, and there is no tracer being done, and so the whole of Region 6 is mayhem right now. But sometimes you got to understand the problem, and blaming people is not going to fix it. But I don't see anything that is being done to fix the pandemic right now. And according to some people, it's way out of control.
You know,
I don't
Natasha,
see
you touched
anything being done.
on a very important point there, where you mentioned that aspect of stop points, checkpoints. I remember for you to go to, when you were entering West Coast Berbice, there was a checkpoint where every single passenger in that vehicle had to have had their temperature checked. If for some reason one passenger, your temperature was above the normal, then you had to step out. They kept you there for about 5-10 minutes. They gave you another test. They checked your temperature again. If the same thing happened, then you were taken to the vehicle, and you were placed there to sit, or either under the shed or the tent, or you were placed in the vehicle, and then they would do administer another testing. And if they got that same results, then they would have indicated to you, look, we have to take you to the closest health center or the closest hospital. But the same thing happened in Region 6. But we have seen from August 2nd, and we have seen that just went out. And I always say it to persons, we have been taught this at the Teachers Training College, where you build on best practices. You copy, you tweet, and you build on best practices. Now, I thought, and you would agree with me, and I'm sure our viewers would agree with me, that was one of the checkpoints, that those stoppings there was an indication of how many persons who are, and don't get me wrong, because some persons don't show any signs, but
Yeah.
that was an indication to say to us how many persons are COVID free when you would have done those random checks. It also gave an indication of persons who were displaying high temperature, and we had to monitor them, whether it's for a half day or something, or 2 hours or 3 hours or something like that. And so we record those, all of those information were recorded, and they were kept there. I don't see anything wrong with us returning to that. And I'm hoping that somebody there listening to me, they're listening to us. And so they can take these little practices and return them to those road checkpoints, so that we can control the spiraling of COVID-19. Now, persons would want to go places, but very often when you look at the numbers that we have in Region 6 at this time, you're very skeptical about wanting to go to Region 6, because I said earlier in the program, COVID is not written on your forehead. And so for me, everybody is a suspect. And I wouldn't want to go to Region 6. And I'm not quite comfortable, because you don't know who in that, grouping that you're going there to meet. You go to a shop, somebody return you, you pay somebody for something, they return your change. You're not sure. And then it can put you in such an uncomfortable position, because when you get there, you with your little spray bottle, as soon as you collect the change, even before you hold the money, you spray the money. And I mean, it can put you in a very embarrassing position. But rather than us getting there, I think we need to return to those days where we had those checkpoints, and we have to beef up what we're doing. Since you mentioned our working environment, Natasha, you know what happened before August 2nd. We had a rotational system. Now we have full force. How do we control the spread of COVID when we have full force in our working environment, and then you don't have proper systems in place in terms of those glass ceilings, those walls that you're putting up there with the glass and that kind of thing, and you're ensuring that everybody, people testing, people doing this, people doing that, just to make sure that they're safe. What systems do we have in place for that? We still see people walking the streets without masks. We still see people congregating at the corners without masks. How are we going to be able to resolve or remedy this if we continue to be a lawless set of people? And I said earlier, we have to start this drive from the top down, not bottom up. Top down is where we need to start this drive. And so, Natasha, you would be able to share with our viewers what were some of the practices that were implemented before August 2nd by the APNU AFC administration, then with regards to persons being on the streets and persons being here and the work environment and so on. Just share with us very quickly.
Now, one of the things I am very, very concerned about, and let me make it clear, the David Granger-led administration cared about the people of Guyana. We are a people-centered leadership. And I want everyone to understand this. When you care about people more than money, you put the people's concern, their safety, their health, their education, you put that first. One of the things that we did when we decided that we're going to go on a rotation basis, we decide that the supervisors for each department will prioritize what are the emergency services offered, and those workers will come out on a rotation basis. All the older folks, who I believe they were over 50, they were asked to stay home because they were seen as high risk. They were asked to stay home completely while still being paid, because we recognize that them coming out will put them at risk, a higher risk of contracting COVID. What we did for staff who were on rotation, the ministry supplied transportation. We ensure that the transportation is sanitized before going out and when they came back. So staff, they were safe to travel. You leave your home, you come to your workplace is sanitized, the transportation you use is sanitized, and you go back home from work, the transportation takes you right back home. And those are some of the measures. We also ensured that our staff had the required equipment to use. They were safe in their working environment. And we saw as soon as they came back into government, all of that went overboard. And so the entire workforce came back. Now, what are you going to do? You encourage the lawlessness. You encourage the spread of the disease. Now, what are you going to do? We've lost so many lives. And I will never stop reminding Guyanese that Bara Jagyo said that people will die. What he didn't understand by making that statement is how uncaring he is. And you know, it's only people who got children can understand what I'm talking about.
How the reality is, Natasha,
the president can say to the nation that people will die. Well, now we have double figures dying every single day. Tell me what you're going to do about it.
The reality is, Natasha, people will have to die. And so it should, that alone should be saying to our people that this administration doesn't care about them. We have seen responsible leaders within CARICOM and outside of CARICOM. They have closed their borders. That's one. Two, they have their curfew hours. They have brought them forward. Rather than bringing ours forward, we carrying ours backward because we have our friends and cronies who got to open their business places and their clubs and so on. We have seen them closing their ports. We have seen in other territories, the governments there manning what happens. They have closed supermarkets, and so supermarkets are now opened on rotational basis. And you go out there depending on the letter of your surname, the letter that your surname begins with. They have the days when you can go out. And I remember in Barbados vividly, only for essential services you were seen on the road. If you were found on the roadways anytime after then, you were being locked up. You were placed before the courts. I have seen people do, we have seen people doing all kinds of things. We've seen people all hours on the road. 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 11:30, all hours you're seeing people on the road. Nobody is being locked up. Persons wearing masks, nobody being locked up. But what you find is persons wanting to place before the courts our official and the professional workers. They're putting them before the courts. Oh, you sell land without getting permission. Oh, you doing this. Oh, you doing that. All kinds of crazy things they're popping up rather than dealing with the issues that are of importance. And again, I want to say, this irresponsible and reckless install regime don't care about us. They really don't care about us. We have another guest to bring in with us. I notice he's having some difficulties, but as soon as he gets here, we'll talk a little more to him. But Natasha, you and I, we traverse the roads very often, and we have had some very startling revelations. One such is the fact that we had a murder on the west coast of Berbice. I think it might have been last week or some early in maybe the week before. And I'm talking here about the issue that involves the late Joel Henry's brother and his neighbor. I can't remember the guy's name, Sarji, something to that effect. We have seen, we heard about our investigators telling us that the crime scene was compromised, or I think it's the guy from Argentina who came and he said the crime scene was compromised and a whole lot of things. Now, I'm still trying to figure out a murder or murders of that nature. Why did the Guyana Police Force, why did the Minister of Home Affairs and all of his advisors, why did they allow a murder scene such as that to be compromised? And that 2 lives were lost there. Now we're seeing 1 person was murdered. But you know what I would have seen? People have gotten wise now that they have cordoned off that area. And it's not only cordoned off, but you have policemen guarding that property. So nobody could go in and out as they like. Why wasn't that done at the scene when Joel and Isaiah Henry were found? Why didn't we do that? Natasha, our people are not stupid. And our people are reading through the lines. Here is it, we have mothers who are hurting, and we are not doing what is necessary to bring these perpetrators to justice. I remember, and you would remember, and our viewers would remember, the persons who were arrested and held there for questioning for Joel and Isaiah and maybe, what's his name? Can't remember the Harish Singh, for the murders of those 3 young men. Or maybe let's talk about the 2 first. We never saw pictures. We never saw pictures of the persons who were arrested. We did not even get names of the persons who were arrested. But you know what? As soon as we had the murder of Sarji or Sarju, whatever is his name, within a flash, we saw a wanted bulletin for Mark Henry.
Yeah.
And we saw this flying left, right, and center. Now, I mean, come on. Our police force, our policemen and our police women, again, let me say to you, be professional in your dealings. Stop taking instructions from political directorates. Stop taking instructions from them. Be professional in carrying out your duties. And let's have happen, or let's conduct our business according to what the book directs us. Not 1 person or 2 persons. The same way we could have concealed all these other things with all the other persons who were held for 72 hours, the same way we could have concealed until you would have gotten enough evidence, and then you brand. But again, with the PPP, anything happens. Natasha, your comments on that?
I want to deal in my mind of over the last couple of days. I've been trying to put things into perspective. And so while I don't want to talk specifically to the murder of I think it's Suroj Deo Diochan. Diochan is his surname. What has happened there is very sad. And I doubt whether we will know the truth of what happened or what happened to Suraj Deo Diochan. I doubt whether we will know the truth. But what I want to bring our viewers' attention to, Coretta, is a bigger picture. And the bigger picture is when the breadwinner of a Black family is missing, for whatever reason, by whatever means, it sends a message. When we had that painting, you remember the famous painting that was making its rounds on social media?
Right.
I said that it is the untold story of that painting that we need to be paying attention to.
Yep.
When you demoralize the family, you take away the breadwinner from the family, what is the message you are sending to that society? And that is a message that we need to pay attention to. When you break the strength of that family, what do you expect? Do you want them to submit to you out of fear? Is that what you want? Because that is how this installed regime is working. It is better to be feared than love, a Machiavellian approach. And Coretta, people are watching because you know what? They are feeling it. And there will be a time when the nonsense has to stop. Enough is enough and it has to stop. I want to, before I go, because I made another commitment and my appointment is outside waiting on me. I want to bring one more matter to your attention. COVID is a pandemic right now. The other pandemic that we are not prepared for is a mental health pandemic. And we will see the spin-off. I had a conversation with some young people last night. In the professional world, their life is on Zoom and Moodle and all these other platforms. In the life of the housewife, what is going on? In the lives of the children who they're still at home, what is going on? In the life of the drug lord, and we've seen the large amount of drugs in our country. Where is that leading us? And so the question is, are we prepared for that second pandemic that will kick in before COVID is over? Are we prepared for that? What are we doing now in relation to our teenagers who are at home?
Natasha, just wanting to be funny, I would refer that question to the Honorable Minister of Education, who walks about the place distributing tablets. I think she might be able to answer us, but I'm not going to leave her to answer us because we might get she's a preposition. But on a serious note, Natasha, it is serious. It is serious because all our children are now learning is to be on Zoom, to be on Enmodo, to be burdened down with this, burdened down with that. They can't go outside to play. as they used to. And so they have all of these energies inside of them, all this energy inside of them, where they can't do anything, where they can't do anything with it. And so how do we get them to exhale, if I can use that? How do we get our children to exhale when we don't have this space for them to go and run and jump? All they know about is being on the laptops, being on the phones, maybe sitting in front of television. When they're finished with that, I don't know. And so we have to set the stage to ensure that we can deal with our children, because many times we take our children for granted, but we don't understand what our children are going through. Many of them are frustrated. And like you said, I hope that we are having systems in place ready to deal with this aspect if and when COVID goes. But if we have both of them, you know what's that? That's double whammy, like people would say. That's double whammy for us. But we have to deal with it. And it means, therefore, Natasha, that we're not going to wait on the installed regime to put systems in place. We have already started doing so, and we will continue to do what we have started doing, because we have recognized that our young people, they mean a lot to us. They mean a lot to our country. And we have to secure them, because when you and I would have been passed next week, tomorrow, whenever, these are the people who will have to pick up the mantle and move on to take this country to its higher heights. And so it's very important for us to be, for you to have mentioned this. So parents out there, let me say to you, please take stock of your children. Talk with them from time to time. Find out what's bothering them. Let's work on seeing how we can resolve some of the issues. They might have little things inside of them that they need clarification on. Let's work with our children to ensure that we don't create monsters that we might not be able to deal with at a later time. Natasha, I want to thank you so much for being here. I know I can always depend on you. Thank you so much. Give my regards to your family, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for being here on Advancing the Cause.
Thank you for having me, Coretta. It's always a pleasure.
You're welcome. Yes. So while we would have had that little bit there with Natasha, we are expecting our other guests to come in. I'm not sure what is happening with him, but we're gonna take a quick 2 minutes break. Let me find out what is happening to our guests, and then we'll return to more on Advancing the Cause.
Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow the man. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow. We go have a grand time all night tonight. All night tonight. All night tonight. We go have a grand time all night tonight. All night tomorrow night. We go have a fine time all night tonight. All night tonight. All night tonight. We go have a fine time all night tonight. All night tomorrow night. Let me go. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow the man. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow.
Yes, thank you for staying with us. When we have our guests, we always ensure that, they can be here and they can share with us. And so when we have difficulties with having them on board, we have to work that out and try to find out what's happening with them. But our guest is going to be here in a short while. While we are waiting our guests, I know that we would have seen in the newspaper and on Facebook one of our installed ministers, and I'm referring here to Nigel Darmlal, who went out there to make a statement talking about local government elections. And, these are the people who talk about democracy, These are the people who have been championing the cause for democracy. These are the people who supported the guardians of democracy. And when we hear these people, when we read statements from these people now, we want to know if these are the same persons who were championing the cause for democracy. We have seen in coming from him a statement about local government elections, and that local government elections hinges on if they can, if and when they are able to remove certain key officials from GCOM. I don't know, I don't, and then they talk about the voters list, that we don't need a new voters list. Come on. When was the last time that we would have had a renewed list? When last we had that? I know during the coalition's term in government, we coming down to elections, that was started, and then it was stopped by the chairman of GCOM. I keep wondering why we stopped that house-to-house registration, why we stopped that process. And if there wasn't some other means by which we could have been able to verify, and I'm sure there were other means, I'm sure lots of ideas were touted by commissioners there. Why couldn't we have gone through with that process so that our list we would not have seen what we saw there during the recount? Dead persons voting, their names being ticked off as being voted. Persons living out of this country, persons who were not here during the period of elections, their names were ticked off on that list or on those lists as being voted. And again, let me remind our people, viewers, let me remind you that the coalition were not defeated at the elections. The coalition were cheated. We were not defeated, we were cheated. 47 ballot boxes, many of them came without any statutory documents except the ballots. So there was no way that we could have verified. And these are the party representatives and this GCOM staff. There was no way that we could have been able to put on board to verify that these ballots were legal ballots. There was no way we could verify that. We had no lists to say to us in some instances how many voters were there, but we had ballots and all were ticked off. They were all marked. We couldn't find ballot stubs. We couldn't find letters that indicated that this person couldn't vote, or that person hadn't ID card, or this person was blind, or any such thing. Nothing like those we had there. All we had in some of those boxes were ballots that were marked. Now, these were cause for concern. And I remember that the chairman, there was a statement that came out, an instruction that came out to every single booth that said those ballots will not be counted. But we all know what happened. And so I wish to remind the persons out there that fraud is fraud. And there's no shortcut to fraud. So when you talk about riggers and sanctimonious gangsters, look at yourselves. Because the evidence is there to show. The evidence is there to show. It's not anything that the coalition is making up. The ballot boxes are there to prove what we are talking about. The observation reports that were signed by members of the parties represented there, they are there to show what came in many of those 47 boxes. What were some of the objections? What were some of the clarifications that were sought? They are right there. So this whole thing, this whole thing that we try to throw off and to talk about, oh, show your SOPs and show your SOPs. We've gone past that. We are now dealing with SORs. That is what we have to deal with now. So don't worry about this SOPs thing. Don't confuse people with this SOP thing. And show us your SOPs and bring out the SOPs. We've gone past that a long time. When that Order 60 came in, it threw out everything about SOPs. And so we're dealing with SORs now. And we're dealing with observations reports. And we're dealing with what is in those boxes. What is in those boxes? That's what we're dealing with now. The petition is before us, and we will see what is coming out, there. But it's quite disgusting. It's quite disgusting that we hear all sorts of talks. All sorts of talks. When you're not in the seat, you say all sorts of things. But when you get in the seat, those things become forgotten. They're forgotten. They become things of the past. You don't talk about them anymore. But I want to remind us, and I will keep doing this, to remind us that just the same way Trump was behaving in the US, when he was labeling China and he was blaming China for COVID, it's just the same way this installed regime blamed the coalition for COVID. They said it's a coalition trying to say this to scare people, and it's a coalition thing. Let's draw from those two. Let's draw from them, and we're going to see exactly where we are going to go. You see the visit, and these things can spill off to so many things. So many issues they can spill off to. We saw Mike Pompeo coming here to visit, but up to a day like today, you can't hear exactly what that visit was all about. All you heard about is Guyana asking for license to ship out catfish. License to ship out catfish. That's all. I mean, a Secretary of State coming here to talk about catfish? Come on. People are wise. People don't want to hear that. But we know exactly what Mike Pompeo came here for. We know exactly what he came for. And when we look at the trend of his visit, we understand exactly why he came here. But time, old people would say, is longer than twine. And we are going to get there. You notice how the rope pulling in? It's pulling in, You check it, you'll see the rope pulling in. You check the rope and you will see the rope pulling in. You notice how, for those of us who read the newspapers, you notice how many letters we are seeing in the newspapers? Yes. People are getting tired of the foolishness, and they're talking about it. They're writing about it. People have been led, many persons have been led astray. Many persons were fooled, but they're seeing reality right now as we speak. Reality is coming to fore. And so it's not going to last. It's not going to last for long. It's not going to last for long. I don't know what is happening with our guests. I don't know what is happening with our guests, and this guest, we wanted to talk about some really important things, but I don't know where is our guest this evening. But I want to say to us that many of our people are suffering. Many of our people are suffering, and as a coalition, we are not going to sit back and allow that to happen. We are not going to sit back and allow that to happen. We will ensure that our people have their say. We are going to ensure that our people get their share, because we are all Guyanese. and we're entitled to every resource. We're entitled to a piece of every resource that we have in this country. We have seen the issue with sugar, and we saw coming from the last two budgets the amount of monies that we have plunged into the sugar industry. We have seen that. We have seen that. But we have heard no talks about what is happening in the bauxite industry. I just noticed the Minister of Labor saying to some of our bauxite workers in Kwakwani just the other day when he visited there, he was telling them to look outside of bauxite. And it only leaves one to wonder, why is this happening? I'm happy that we're having our guests on here now. So let me not go further into that. Comrade Lois, good evening to you and welcome to Advancing the Cause. We were looking out for you for quite some time now, but I'm happy that you're here. But I was just sharing with our viewers that we have seen in the last two budgets hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars being pumped into the sugar industry. And we are here trying to revive an industry that we all know. Barrow Jagdeo knew that. When he closed the sugar industry during his tenure as president, he was the first person who said, sugar ain't making it, we can't go further. But here now we are seeing this very man, Jagdeo, with his cohorts, talking about them reviving the sugar industry. But while they're talking about reviving the sugar industry, there is no talk about the bauxite workers. Tell us what is happening with regards to the bauxite workers, and where is it that they are now, and what plans this government has for the bauxite workers.
Thanks for inviting me to your show. And let me commend you first and foremost that I have been looking at it, and I believe that the show has improved tremendously. And you are doing a great job.
Thanks much.
As it relates to the BCGI workers, the BCGI company, Bauxite Company Guyana Incorporated. BCGI is a company that it was owned by the government of Guyana and Russian Aluminum Limited. Let me say to you, what has happened over the years is a situation where workers, every matter that you have taken to the ministry or the labor department, there have been some pussyfooting on those matters. From 2009, it is the first time in the history in my life as a trade unionist to understand, to hear a minister of labor saying that there's a strike and let the parties go and cool out, and after the holidays, the matter can be addressed. And that minister that I'm talking about is Minister Mansour Nadir, who had responsibility for labor.
You're talking about the guy who is now the speaker. You're talking about the guy who is now the Speaker of the National Assembly.
Yes, I'm talking about the same man who is the speaker. And I sit back at times and I ask myself, why is it that you're worrying with this guy? Because he will do nothing different. When it comes to the question of rights, rule of law, justice, and fair play, even if that falls on his head or in his lap, he will not recognize them. This here is what I called, what I named some years ago. This is issue as economic genocide against a people. When you take away people bread and butter, what you intend them to do is to starve to death. What they believe that the communities, the bauxite communities, are voting farms, and all they can do is to walk around
and seek to get those people to vote. The two issues before us is one, there's outstanding negotiation. There's an agreement between union and the company to commence a new collective labor agreement. Negotiate that. There's an agreement on that. The company has decided, when the union demanded that you pay wages that are commensurate to what happens in the bauxite industry. In Linden, in Bonasika, all those things, what you've had is a situation where the company decides that they are going to continue to pay 48% less than what the people at Linden receive for commensurate jobs, for equal jobs. I started my work life in the bauxite industry. I'm a mechanic by trade. I may be a trade unionist in some form. It is the first time in the history I have ever seen the disparity in wages between the Berbice and the Berbice bauxite operation and the Linden bauxite operation. You may have had $1 difference or a 50 cents difference in wages. You have seen happen here. And what worries me is that the government of Guyana owns a part of this company. And when you talk to them, all the position that is being taken is that you must accept what the company puts on the table. The collective labor, the grievance procedure in the collective labor agreement says, stage one, if you have a general question, which is like wages and salaries, that's stage one. You have bilateral negotiations. Stage two, if you break down, you go to stage two, which is conciliation. And stage three, in this agreement says, the grievance procedure says, that either party can apply for arbitration proceedings to be put in place if there's no agreement between the parties at conciliation. We have done that. We have met at conciliation. We disagree. There's no agreement. BCGI continues to be a legal entity in this country. And there's a recognition agreement between the Guyana Bauxite and General Workers Union and the Bauxite and BCGI. All that the Minister of Labor is supposed to do, the Labor Department, is to call the parties in to continue the process. The question is not whether the company is operating. The company is a legal entity, and there's an agreement between the company and the union. All that you have to do, and you have to honor it, all that they need to do is to call in the parties.
So Lincoln, Lincoln, are you saying to us, are you saying to the viewers at this point that the Minister of Labor, the installed Minister of Labor that we have right now, he is not paying any mind to that? Because I noticed an article that says he visited Kokwani and he was telling the folks that they need to move on from bauxite now. Are you saying that this is where the Ministry of Labor is closing and they're washing their hands from bauxite?
Yes, that's the other way they're doing. Let me tell you further. Let me tell you further on this issue. This issue here is that the minister and his team, they are totally wrong. We move beyond that. When people were terminated, they were paid redundancy benefit. You know what the company did? The company took the salaries of the persons who were employed, the total salaries, deduct it, divide it by 365 days, right? And then they arrive at the pay of an individual. And then they take that their pay and calculate it by 40 hours. So what they did is to shortchange or rob the workers. We apply for conciliation to the military to deal with this matter. And the minister and his chief labor officer, all of them vacillating and running to say, company closed, they can't do anything. It is not for them to determine whether it's operational or not. It is for them to determine in the first instance that there's a grievance existing between a legal company that exists in this country and a union, and to conciliate in this matter. And if they
Lincoln,
fail, then you move to arbitration.
So Lincoln, you're saying that the same people who were guardians of democracy, that they were only guarding ballots and they're not guarding the democratic process that is expected to be carried through when it comes to the rights of Guyanese workers. Is that what you're saying to us here?
I am saying very clear what are the point I'm making. That the question of respecting the rights and the rule of law in this country is that the Labor Department is not prepared to address that. All these talks about what is safe and unsafe and what is being done. Let me tell you what. I heard the minister last Thursday. He said, you know what he said? He said he's giving the people until the third quarter, end of the third quarter, and they have to fix their house in the third, from now to the third quarter, and as it relates to occupational safety, and after that is going to come. The law says that you got to fix it now. You can't wait for another time. The law, if you commit an offense now, the law can't come. The law don't say that I'm going to give you a chance until, I'm not going to impose the law until next year. The law, if a man chops a woman or a woman born a man, the law says that you have committed an offense and you have to address it now. You don't put back, you don't procrastinate the rights of people. And that is what is being done in this country. The matters before them is the matter before them is a new collective labor agreement and the shortchanging of workers who were terminated. Let me tell you what. People will ask you, some people will buy into this notion, say the company closed down, so why you want collective labor agreement? Why you negotiating new? This thing here, the agreement came to an end since 2009. And you're working people from 2009, 2019, 20, some come off in 2020. You work people that you have refused to negotiate a new collective agreement, increase wages and salaries. So you owe people, you owe workers, where we've been exploiting workers over the period. And there are two benefits workers can retrieve from that. An increase in pay, an increase with state, that during that time on the job, they were shortchanged, even if it's by $1, if it's by $200, or how much it is. And secondly, when you calculated the people's benefits, you calculated them on rates that were not agreed upon between the company and the union. So they will receive retroactive, they will receive increased pay under both grounds. We cannot allow people to come to this country, do as they like, and we have to accept even our rights being transgressed and our laws being violated. This
Lincoln.
People we gotta be informed.
Lincoln, we are running out of time. Cheryl Duncan, the Honorable Cheryl Duncan, comes on next. We have to continue this conversation because, like I said earlier, we have seen lots and lots and lots of emphasis being placed on sugar. Even though we know that we are going to be producing at a loss, selling at a loss, but yet we are pumping loads and loads of monies into sugar. But here is it, Maybe because the bauxite workers are presumed to be supporters of the coalition, we have decided that we are going to blast on them economic genocide, like you would always
It is
say.
not. It,
This here
it is
cannot
not.
continue to
They're
happen.
presumed to be supporters.
Yes, they're presumed to be supporters of the coalition, and so we have got to stop this, and our people have got to understand that what is good for the goose must be good for the gander. What is good for the hen must be good for the cock. What is good for supporters of the PPP must also be good for the supporters of the coalition and whichever other party. And so when you want to champion the call for democracy and be guardians of democracy, democracy doesn't have partitions. It doesn't have sides. Democracy is democracy. We have to close on this note. I want to thank you for being here, Lincoln. But I want to say to you, at short notice, I'm going to call you again on this program, because our people must know what is happening. Our people must be able to draw conclusions. They must be able to compare. But before I close, I just wanted to say this much to our viewers out there. And Lincoln, you would understand where I'm coming from here. I've been getting all these back and forth calls and all kinds of Facebook posting, highlighting the fact that Coretta MacDonald is the General Secretary of the Guyana Teachers Union. They're not talking about the Guyana Trades Union Congress so much. The Guyana Teachers Union, and she is a member of Parliament for the coalition. And let me say to you viewers, don't let them confuse you. Don't let them confuse you. When you hear them say that, or you see them post those things on Facebook, you just ask them. My colleague, my trade union colleague, Sipol Narain, he is now the president of GAU, and he is sitting as a government MP. You see, we often always want to shy away from things that are important, and we want to cast shadows on other places. Nobody is having a problem with Sipol Narain. Nobody had a problem with the late Kamal Chand, who was president of GAU, who was president of FITUG, and he also sat there as an opposition member. He sat there as a government member of Parliament. But everybody is having a problem with Coretta MacDonald. Let me say to you, my viewers, Coretta MacDonald will continue to stand strong. The PPP ain't got no brush they could dab on me. Let me tell them that. So when you come with your foolishness, we will throw them in a corner. Please remember, my viewers, we love you. We want you to be here. We have to lift the standards of this country so that every single Guyanese citizen can be treated equally. Lincoln, I give you 1 minute to wrap up, and then we'll close.
Let me just make this point, The trade union movement preceded the political movement in the country.
Exactly.
The issue of one man, one vote started with Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow in 1926. The march for doing what we did as trade union is to give up. When we talk about internal self-government, is to give up to the politicians some of the program that we were advancing. Let me make it very clear that the trade union, as a social, a moral, a cultural, and a political agenda to make sure that we influence the decision making in society. And any member, any trade unionists who enter the hollow halls of the National Assembly must be commended and supported. We must work. That's where we have to go and make laws that are progressive, laws and set programs that are progressive in the interest of workers. We can't sit them outside and talk about it. We are going there. And Coretta, you have my unstinted support. We shall walk together.
Yes,
Enjoy.
of course. Thank you so much, Lincoln, for being here. And to my viewers, thank you for being here with us again another Wednesday night on Advancing the Cause. We love you, like I said. We want to ensure that all of us can sit at that table and be equally treated. and we will work towards that. Remember, COVID is real. COVID kills. Wear your mask correctly. Wash your hands thoroughly. Sanitize as often as possible and stay away from large crowds. Remember again, COVID is not written on anyone's forehead, and everyone should be treated as a suspect. Do take care, Guyana. Do take care, my friends in the Caribbean and those further afield. Thank you for being here with us. We love you, and we look forward to having Sherrod in the ring. Stay tuned. We'll be having Sherrod coming up soon. Be good Guyanese citizen. Be good Caribbean citizen. Be good Guyanese living near and afar. Together, we would all work to ensure that our Guyana becomes the land again of the plenty, the land that has once been the food basket of the Caribbean, and the land that will become the Dubai of the Caribbean, because all of us will work together. All of us are going to be treated equally, and all of us will be at the table to make the decisions that will benefit this country. So long, bye-bye, your humble servant, Coretta MacDonald. See you next week. Take care.
Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow the man. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow. We go have a grand time all night tonight. All night tonight. All night tonight. We go have a grand time all night tonight. All night tomorrow night. We go have a fine time all night tonight. All night tonight. All night tonight. We go have a fine time all night tonight. All night tomorrow night. Let me go. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow the man. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow, blow. Holla the blow, blow,